1, 2, 3 bolts there, and a 4th down here. Okay, so there's the bolts 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and then we have a nut on either end of the muffler. So we got
6. Oh,
1,
that
2,
had a plate on.
3, another one there, 4,
5, 6.
5, 6.
And that one, these ones have a plate at the back. That plate goes there.
Oh, and the plate that holds on the air containery thingy. A bracket goes on there, and the plastic little clip slides on the top of it like that. Okay, just taking off the 4 electric plugs. They got clips on the side. Squeeze them in, and she comes. Plug here. That clips into there. Take this clip off of here. We'll get this hose off. This all connects this hose down here. Actually, this is gonna, looks like that's gonna have to be unbolted, maybe. So yeah, this hose under here connects up to this, and we'll disconnect all that. Okay, exhaust. This hose off the back here. Prise the exhaust. Prise the exhaust off and took off the aluminium gasket for it, and that just prised off there, and I did 2 bolts. I did 2 bolts under the car there on the exhaust, which by looking at that I didn't need to. The exhaust dropped down anyway, bent down without that, and took out 2 plastic screws out of this guard here, so I can pull that down to access turning the undid this clip here to disconnect that. However, you can't get that off because there's not enough room until we lift the head up, and then that will come off. That one's okay. We have to take, this is going to have to come off in the back here. We've got 2, this cable here, just the mount bracing, and that connector, and there's another blue connector. There's another one of those blue connectors onto the back of there that has to come off, which is off. Okay, so what we did here is we got down underneath here, unclipped that 2 bolts, those 2 bolts off of there at the top, one over there, 2 clips, sorry, and then 2 bolts, 2 little plastic nuts off the bottom, undid those, and that gave us access to here. And I've put I think it's an 18mm socket on there, and then turned everything so these were up. See that? Up and up. And there's 2 little notches on here we centered those and lined them up, and put different colour bits of paint to try and mark exactly where our reference point is. Hopefully it looks colourful. Actually, engines need a bit more colour.
They should be colour coded.
Colour coded engine bits. That'd be much better.
Jeez.
Fuck, why don't I do that? And then down here, somewhere where there's some yellow paint, which is a real annoying thing. It's pretty hard to see this. I don't think my phone's going to want to focus in there either. Maybe that'll do it. Okay. Okay. Now there's one notch. Shit, I can't do it. Okay, so, and then on that bit of plastic there, we've lined the notch up, one notch up there, and there's got 3 notches further down, which are down there, and one notch directly on that mark there. So I'm assuming that's top dead center. Anyway, that's where it's at. So we're going to pull that apart, pull the timing belt off, and then pull off all our pieces. Tap it with a, we've got a rubber mallet. We haven't got a rubber mallet.
Yes, we do.
So we've undone the cam bolts. Now just trying to get the little brackety things off the top. Underneath the gunk is like, so we've got E1, E2, E3, and they all show the direction that they've got to be in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got it? That in taking the last piece off here, that this is all connected to these bolts at the end, so that whole piece has to come off there. And there we have it. Long bolts are on the inside and short bolts are on the outside. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go. Take them off in the same order. Very good. Okay, so there's 2 12mm bolts that connect underneath here onto this bracket, and basically got the 12mm up under here. I've managed to get one out. There's one more to go, so it just connects onto that bracket, onto the underneath there. You can probably make sense of the bracket there. I'm assuming they've got to come off. So we've unbolted this, but we haven't fully disconnected it. I've cracked all these, which were, I think, size 14. They were 14mm. Very hard to crack. Cracked them all up. So cracked each one a little bit, cracked each one a little bit, and then loosened them off. Now we're just about to pull all these bolts out. The hard bit down here, there was two screws located down the side that we've pulled out. I managed to get to one with a spanner and the other one with a little socket. Very awkward. So I think I've disconnected everything, and so now it's time to start moving the head and seeing what's still connected, what's not connected, and what happens once we move these bolts out. But we're just getting a container to lift all the bolts out into. Okay, so we've lifted the head up and we found 2 connectors at the back. One was this one on this wire, which really didn't even need to be connected, and we have this connected here that we're going to quickly disconnect. Maybe we should color code this one as well.
Yeah.
Okay, you can see here that I've removed the plug from the bottom of the engine, and I've been scraping out the bung, and look what's come out. I don't know what that is. Rust, corrosion, gasket goo, don't know. Shivers. Don't know what that is, but a lot of it.
Did it charge?
Yeah, it did quickly too, 72%. So we managed to lift the engine block off, and it's pretty gnarly. That's just where I've been scraping the stuff there. So here's the head gasket, which has all this product in between it, and looks like it was compromised in a few areas. Hard to tell exactly what caused it. Warping, we're thinking, was it warping, not put on properly? We're yet to find that out. Whatever was clocking the coolant system has also blocked this end piece off of the attachment that goes on the bottom of the carby. Don't really know what that is. I don't know what this does. Maybe cools the fuel if it gets too hot or something. I don't know. Gets the fuel, maybe warms the fuel up a bit.
Sounds technical.
But we can't get these screws off the end at the moment. So that's going to be the next thing, and try and clean out the gunk in there. There's one locating pin in this corner, and another. Oh, what happened there? Did that get trod on or something? It's bent. Oh, did they get trod on or something? Must have done.
Yep.
Anyway, that's the other locating pin.
Was.
This one's nice and round. Anyway, there's the two locating pins. Should be round. Yeah, if it's too expensive to redo the head or anything, just get a gasket, clean that up as much as, get some really fine sandpaper, and I'll really finely sand that.
That's what I was thinking, this. Yeah. But
The air intake manifold. So I'm just going to undo all those bolts. You can have a look here. I've taped up the oil section, and I've just been cleaning the carbon off the piston. So I brought them to the top so we're not scratching the thing, and I'm just cleaning all that carbon off as best as I can, just giving it a touch up and the edges, and we'll see how it looks at the end of it. So I just got the 10mm taking off these rocker cover bolts, get them out of the way. So we've got a long one. We have to mark this down here. We've got a short one on the left hand side of the motor, two long ones, and the rest short. We were actually missing one apparently. We're using a 10mm screw on. One's a bolt, nut, bolt. It's on the bottom. So now on the top we've got a bolt and nut, and a bolt on the top as well.
years old now, that one. Yeah.
Wow, you did a great job on that. Wow, what's your technique for moulding aluminium like that?
My trade.
That explains it.
Yeah, you had to
Wow.
build it out of wood, didn't you?
Yeah, I built it out of wood first and then I made
Then moulded.
yeah. Yeah.
Still.
Belongs in a museum.
Even a wood version would be impressive to...
Yeah, yeah.
You let that rot.
Huh?
You
Yeah.
let that rot.
Yeah, that bit that I done.
Oh dear.
Wow, you've done an amazing job.
Yeah. Yeah, the good old rocket.
That's a work of art.
Did you take it out much?
Yeah, it's registered.
Okay, so the head's been milled and cleaned. So they've washed this out with Kero. There's still a lot of grime. There's still a lot of grime in there that probably needs to come out. And here's the head, all milled up and nice and flat. I keep debating whether we should do the valves, spin the valves with a bit of valve paste, if it's worth the effort. And maybe they cleaned up this. There's a pinhole, it turns out, right there, you can see. So if we put our hose over it, and they suggested maybe some epoxy mixed up, put in the hole. But the hose should hopefully cover that. So I'm going to take the thermostat and have a look in here. It looks pretty corroded. Hopefully it works. We'll put it in hot water, do the hot water test. If I can get these screws off while the engine's off, I might as well do this. The head's off. The water pump's relatively easy to take off. There's this clip. Just got to push the back off underneath, slide that off, and this little earth line. This little electronic line here, and you got the bolt underneath here, which was actually a bit of a challenge to get to, but the ring spanner managed to get. This one I couldn't crack with the ring. I had to end up getting a socket onto it, which I forced into there. So the rocker covers have been cleaned, and the rockers themselves, and the cam covers, and I just used the old Digger's paint stripper and took all the paint off the tatty paint, flaky paint off the cam valve cover. So that's done. I've sanded down the head. There is some low spots here. Geez, that corrosion's pretty bad there. And there's some spots I don't like here, like just in there. It's pretty smooth. Just in between the heads there. And there. What we have is these two attachment points at the top here. One was here, which, as you can see, the bolt stripped off, and on closer inspection the other side had the same issue, and they've put another bolt in a different spot. And so in hindsight I probably should have just bent this up and then pulled the radiator out and then bent it back down once it was back in, because now I've got another problem to deal with. There's two rubber grommets on the bottom of the radiator that just slip in like so, that the radiator just sat in, and then these held it in place. Just note there's two hoses from the automatic transmission for cooling the automatic transmission oil, and so those two were taken off. They had the clip clamps on them, and just pulled the radiator. Radiator came out pretty easy. There's two clips for the fan. Here, and here's the other one. So those clips are fairly easy. You just, well, kind of, they have a thing you push at the bottom of the back here, and then they slide out. So 2 fans, and basically these 2 bolts, those 2 clamps, and then of course your hoses, your bottom hose and your top hose, and away you go. So basically we just filled the radiator, kept these up to stop the oil draining, put the radiator cap on and filled it with vinegar, and let it sit overnight, and we're just going to give it a flush. So next trick is to... So here's an experiment with the new very fancy thermostat. It's an $80 thermostat, Daco. And you had to buy the gasket separate, which was another $9. So, but the point is, it's open at current temperature is... Where's the current temperature? Current temperature is 81.1, and it's open.
That's like fully open, both of them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But without the rubber, I do like the idea of there's no rubber in that one.
It doesn't even really need the rubber.
No, that's right. Like if you peeled that rubber off, it'd probably be alright. Into it this way, but because this is so badly corroded on the lip, I've cleaned it as best I can. I'm actually going to smear a bit of gasket goo to hopefully fill any imperfections in there. And gaskets in, so thermostat and gaskets in. Now I've just got to attach the earth wire and the plug, which I actually removed. I removed the plug to be able to get in there with the spanner better. The surfaces with carby cleaner, they seem pretty flat. Where's it going to be? So we're just slipping this on, and we're going to torque this up to the specifications. Okay, so we poked a lot of cloth down and made sure all the bolt holes were clear, all the bolts have been cleaned. I put a bit of oil on the bolts, put them all down, threaded them all down, wiped that off, cleaned that off, did that multiple times, wiped out the cylinders multiple times, so she should be clean. They say it's important to make sure the bolt holes are extremely clean, so we've done that a couple of times. And the head is being wiped down clean with degreaser, and so is the block. So we're pretty much ready to go back on. And the recommendation is to put a very thin smear of grease just on the gasket, like a very thin, to smear it thin. Some people don't recommend it, but I've had 2 good mechanics recommend doing it, so that's what I'm doing. So yeah, there was no up written on our gasket. No up written on the gasket, so we just went, picked away, and it looks symmetrical as long as the at the top, so we stuck with that. Now it's tensioning, putting the head bolts back in. 2 long ones in the middle, so we've got to find out which ones the long ones are. So the 2 longest bolts went in the middle, and the sitting smaller bolts, I ran each thread through a rag with my nail and turned it all the way through the thread, and a lot of gunk came out of the thread, so I'm glad I did that. A little bit of oil on the thread, dipped just a light covering of oil then in the head, and so now we're up to using a torque wrench and the 2-stage torquing scenario. Torque. Engine and the manifold, intake manifold. And what we did is we labelled everything with these paint pens. And it's great. You just go click, 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 click. You don't even have to think about where everything's got to go. You just go, oh, I must admit. It's, when you got a lot of hoses floating around, it's a great way. Engines should be colour coded. Why do they colour code engines? Because they didn't want people doing this at home. Bolt sheared off simply because it wasn't flat, and I tightened this one down and this one was still raised a bit, and I went to tighten this one down and then it popped this cam bolt off inside. So Dave came over, he had a drill bit, we centre drilled out the old one, and then he tapped in a little star hex bit into the top and used that like an easy out, and very cleverly, because he's a very clever engineer,
You got another
pulled
bolt
it out,
going
and
here.
we found another bolt and we've whacked that in its place. Just putting the distributor back on, the end fittings and the hoses. Well, engine's back together and going. It actually runs. For how long? That's a really good question. Okay. See, we have it. One running engine back together. Everything seems to be working. Managed to seal up all the leaks. And everything, painted the head blue just for an effect. Actually, this paint's transparent and quite soft, so I wouldn't recommend that paint again. This paint, it's like a transparent metal paint. I mean, it looks kind of cool, but it was quite soft, and also it's transparent, so you can't just touch up bits on it. I don't mind the colour though.